Hello and welcome to the Orcs and Goblins Arcane Journal rundown on the Bearfoot Miniatures channel. Today, as I said, we'll be going over the Arcane Journal, where we'll be doing the magic items first, followed by the Nomadic Waaagh, as well as the Troll Horde. With each of them, we're going to do the special characters. Now that's something that I don't normally do because I don't use special characters that often in my own games. But I think these two fit in very nicely with the Arcane Journal list that they're sort of paired with. But they do actually work really well in normal Orcs and Goblins lists and can transfer some of the benefits of the Arcane Journal list into a normal Orcs and Goblins list as well. So I thought it was really worth going over. If you like this video, please do all the YouTubey stuff. It really does help get the video seen by more people, and that helps out the channel massively. If you really like it, there is a Patreon link below where you can get yourself audio streams of these videos, like we do a podcast format on all podcast apps, as well as ad-free versions of the actual videos, early release, dice, and access to the Discord. And with that, let's get into the magic items. Now, this is something that Orcs and Goblins had quite a good time of it, I would say, in the main book, Orcs and Goblin Tribes list. Now, the magic items from the Arcane Journal, I wouldn't say are as good, but it's only because Orcs and Goblins had such a good time of it in the main list. Weapons, we've got usually my least liked section, and let's just go through it. So the bigger choppier axe is 55 points and essentially gives you a great weapon with magical attacks and killing blow. 55 points. I just don't think it's worth it. It retains strike last, which an Ogre Blade doesn't have, for only 10 points more. Yes, because it's 55 points rather than 65 points. It lets you get into some of the other magic items that pair well with things that are 45 points, but I just don't think gaining killing blow is worth it for essentially 52 points over a great weapon, or whatever, 51 points maybe. I just don't think it's worth it, especially because you lose the chopper's special rule because it's a magic weapon that you're using over, say, a great weapon, which would go to AP -3 on the charge from the chopper's rule. Martog's Best Basher for 50 points. You get strength +1, AP -2, magical attacks and 2 hands, and you gain +1 weapon skill and initiative. Now, weapon skill and initiative can be quite nice paired up, as they take your Black Orc boss to being actually a higher weapon skill than the base level of, say, a Chaos Lord, which is really nice for that, hitting them on 3s. And hitting, obviously, then most things on 3s. Also, will push a normal Orc War Boss into the same weapon skill range as a Chaos Lord, which I'm using as the comparison point, because they're likely going to be one of the hardest heroes that you face, or the hardest characters that you face. So it puts you in quite a nice range, but for 50 points, not letting you stack a few other magic items onto your character, I think I'd prefer to steer away from it personally. Having, say, like the Trollhide Trousers along with a Talisman of Protection to get a 5-up, 5-up on top of your armour, I think is usually a better investment than taking your strength down by 1 over a great weapon to gain that weapon skill and initiative. I think having the higher strength of a normal great weapon, better AP on a normal great weapon on the charge, as well as the defensive capabilities of other items, for me is a more attractive possibility of your magic items limit. You've got the Acrit Axe. The Acrit? Yeah, the Acrit Axe. 30 points, you get strength +1, armor bane 1, magical attacks, and you can re-roll failed rolls to hit whilst using it. So that's just all the time, 30 points. The strength modifier is only in the first round of combat. 30 points, yes, you re-rolling all the time, that's quite nice. Losing any AP value of your weapon all the time, though. If you were after re-rolling your hits, I actually prefer taking something like the Paymaster's Coin for 25 points and using it in that key turn to get re-rolls to hit, and then you're not sacrificing any strength bonuses, any AP. Yes, you've not got a magical attacks on your weapon, but comes in, I think, more useful to have that AP all the time. And it's largely going to be AP that I obviously weigh things against, because AP being at such a limited amount, now that you AP isn't based off strength like it was in previous editions, AP2, AP3 is really important to get in your list, especially for your character levels, which you want to be a lot of the time better than other characters. Even on Blender Lords, you sort of want to be ignored that it's still useful to have AP2 and a Blender Lord, because light armor and shield, you want to just be ignoring that save because it skips an entire step of someone being able to remove your attacks. Backstabber's Blade for 25 points. This one is only available to Goblin bosses and Night Goblin bosses. You get +1 strength, -1 AP, and magical attacks. If you're in the flank, you get to reroll failed to wound, and if you're in the rear, you get to reroll failed to hit and to wound. Now, this is something that I think, using it on an infantry model, I don't think it will be worth the points investment based on the amount of times you'll actually get into the flank and rear. Mounted characters, as I said, in the nomadic list, increasing that again, potentially worth it. Whether or not it's worth 25 points, I think I'm 50-50 about. If you can get, obviously, into those flanks and rear charges reliably, yes, going to be worth it. It's just going to come down to, obviously, your own tactics as the player. Next, we've got the magical armor. Dead Hard armor for 35 points. You improve your toughness by 1, as well as being full plate armor, and it's available to both Black Orcs and Orc bosses. It's only been able to be put on infantry, cavalry, or chariot, so you can't put your boss on Wyvern with the Dead Hard armor. It can be combined with Trollhide trousers, because Trollhide trousers can be worn with other suits of armor and things like that, so it can get a combination there. However, for 35 points plus the 40 points of the Trollhide trousers, I think you're likely going to be better for your general going with the Talisman of Protection and the Trollhide trousers for that 5 up, 5 up. If you do have another character with a large magic items limit, and then therefore you can't take the Talisman of Protection and Trollhide trousers again, because the Talisman of Protection isn't extremely common, you could take Trollhide and the Dead Hard armor. It does make any toughness 5 characters like Orc war bosses, Black Orc bosses, things like that, toughness 6. So then if you've got a bit of a Blender Lord that's going to be running into strength 4 units, wounding you on 6s, a big bonus because it will save your wounds. However, if you do have a Blender Lord, you'll likely want to get more attacks. So I'm sort of split on its usefulness. It's definitely not bad, but I think there's better things throughout. Those Trollhide trousers are just so good. It's almost never worth looking at anything else with your points allowance limit until you've got them. And then the Talisman of Protection, like another step within your saves, is just brilliant. Spiteful Shield for 20 points. It's a normal shield. In addition, any enemy model that rolls a natural 1 when making a roll to hit or to wound against the wielder of the shield suffers a strength 4 hit with an AP dash. I don't think it's that great. Normal enemy models, such as like just the rank and file, I mean, that might do a little bit too. Whether that's worth 20 points to combat them, more I tend to look at my characters versus other characters, and something that's AP dash and only strength 4 triggering on a 1 isn't going to do that much across the game. And when it's taking 20% of your magic items allowance for a 100-point limit character, it's a large chunk that only triggers 1 in 6 of the attacks that the enemy makes. In Talismans, we've got the Sparkly Wizard Finder for 45 points. You gain magic resistance 2 in hatred enemy wizards. I think it's too situational to be that 45 points. If you were seeing lots of, say, wizards on dragons, maybe you've got a Vampire Counts player playing with a dragon in your area, maybe someone's spamming the wizarding hat all the time, maybe quite good. Don't tend to think you need hatred on characters that are going to be attacking enemy wizards, because outside of a few cases, your combat character should be killing that wizard anyway because they've got no armor, they're lower toughness, don't need it as much. The magic resistance -2, I do think you've got a better, or a couple of better items in the main list that protect you from enemy magic than magic resistance 2 on that character. The glowy green amulet, as well as, the Idol of Mork, I think is better magical defenses than just having magic resistance 2 on a single character. And that's glowy green amulet 2 up to just dispel the spell, having no effect. And the Idol of Mork increasing your own caster's dispel range by 3 to get your level 4 within that range much more easily. And the bearer of the Idol of Mork re-rolling dispel rolls just makes it much more likely that you're going to dispel. So you stick that on your level 4 and just have more range and ability to dispel at all times rather than just the enemy caster casting at your one unit that has the sparkly wizard finder. The Effigy of Mork for 35 points. Any enemy model that directs its attacks against the bearer of the effigy suffers -1 to its hit rolls. Now for 35 points, I actually think that's really useful. Plow a weapon skill 7 character into a weapon skill 3 unit. It then means that 5s to hit you normally goes to 6s, which is a massive difference. It's obviously doubling or halving the amount of attacks that are actually hitting you. It's also reducing incoming damage from lords all the time. So in a lot of situations, it's cutting out numbers of attacks coming in. I think it's a worthwhile item. My personal choice is to still go Talisman of Protection, but I think the Effigy of a Mork as a secondary on another character, I really like it. I like it more than the Dead Hard Armor, to be honest, for coming in basically all situations, rather than just when your opponent has, say, strength 4 or strength 5, because you would be going to toughness 6 on your Dead Hard Armor. Magic standards. Now this was a real standout section in the main Orcs and Goblins list. We've got the Angry Lad's Flag giving you Frenzy. Frenzy's nice special rule. Good to have it in situations where you want it. Frenzy controlling what your unit's going to do. It's a very powerful special rule, but has its drawbacks. Now, there's 2 ways to look at it. On an infantry unit, you're not going to be pulled too far out of your line, so you gain the benefits of basically immune to psychology by having Frenzy, as well as not going too wild, especially if the infantry unit's in the centre of your battle line. So any betas of your unit are going to be flanked by your own faster units on your own flanks, so are in a bit more danger. So that can be quite a nice place to put it, in a big unit in your centre. Alternatively, having a fast moving unit, a bit more easily baited, but if in your turn you can plough your unit forwards and have multiple charge target opportunities, it mitigates the downsides of Frenzy a little bit by you still having the choice of, like, well, I'll put my Frenzy unit into a certain unit that you want it to go into, rather than just any baiting unit or things like that. The Spider Banner, 35 points. Basically, you gain poison attacks, or if you already had poison attacks, you poison triggers on a 5/6 rather than a 6. Really quite useful, I think. It's worth the value of 3 Goblin Spider Riders, which 12 points each comes to 36 points. I quite like it for increasing those chances. It makes the unit more likely able to chip some wounds off a high toughness opponent, but just be wary of over investing into what is quite a squishy unit. Now, on other units, I suppose, say like a Black Orc unit or Orc Boys unit that might already have Frenzy or give it Frenzy with a banner and then have your battle standard with this. Though I'm sort of stretching for these options because there's already such good magic standards in the Orc and Goblin main list. So I suppose ignore me on them combinations, that it might be a little fun to try if you're sick of the magic banners that are already in the main list. The Banner of the Nomads, 25 points. When a unit carrying the banner of the Nomads makes a charge, flee, pursuit, you may re-roll any dice that rolls a natural 1 before discarding any dice that are required to be discarded. Kind of nice, but with banners out there that allow you to just re-roll the charge roll, I think that's much more useful because you get a bad roll and you just re-roll all of the dice rather than just the ones. If you just roll 2s, you can't do anything about it with this banner. So some better options out there than this particular one. The Banner of the Wild, 20 points, gaining move through cover. Yes, you don't suffer that -1 to move, and it does come into it sometimes. With move through cover, not ignoring the part of moving through cover that makes you roll 2d6, pick the lowest for your charge, I think the use is actually limited. Yes, it's okay for your maneuver around the table, but on that critical part of charging, it falls down. So for 20 points, I'd prefer to put my points elsewhere, especially with a magic standard allowance of say up to 50 points and such good magic standards in the Orcs and Goblins list. Enchanted items, we get the Necklace of Blessed Teeth for 50 points. You may re-roll armor saves, ward saves, or regens of any natural 1. Re-rolling armor, ward, and regen is quite nice. However, you're only going to be able to have, say, your armor and a Talisman of Protection or the Trollhide trousers. And so for 50 points, just adding another layer of save for that same thing, I think is a better investment than just re-rolling the ones on a couple of saves. It just seems to work out better in my head. I've not done any actual maths on that, but it just seems like a nicer calculation for me to be getting armor, ward, and regen rather than armor and ward re-rolling the ones. The Grizzly Trophy Rack for 30 points. So this is on Black Orc bosses, Orc bosses, Goblin bosses, and Night Goblin bosses. So basically just the bosses. All enemy units within 6 inches suffer -1 leadership to a minimum of 2. 30 points. I would say this is an incredibly good item. Bubbles of minus leadership and that can't be dispelled, especially, that will stack with other things like terror. If you can get terror into a combat to work in your favor, resulting into a -2 leadership. Incredibly good. Just having a better chance of your opponent actually breaking and fleeing rather than just falling back in good order from a combat. Incredibly good. 30 points. I'd say find the space in pretty much any list to get in a magic item that gives -1 leadership to your opponent. Because you could even have it on a standard bearer that's just following your cheap battle standard bearer that's just following your units around for re-rolling your own leadership tests. You slap this on and they just run around providing bubbles of -1 leadership. Incredibly good. Dethinking Orcs at for 25 points, you get +1 initiative bonus as well as ignoring impetuosity. A good investment, I would say. 25 points. It means that in lists where, say like the Nomadic Waaagh list, where you can't get Quell Impetuosity in there, it gives you at least a single instance of it. It means that if you don't want to like spam Black Orcs through your list, you've still got a bit of sort of reliability in your list. And when we were talking last episode about wanting to like go backwards and forth, Goblin Shamans in say like a Wolf Rider unit that has reserve move to like sort of tow your way through Orcs and Goblins with a Shaman, having the Thinking Orcs at on the Shaman to quelling the impetuosity of the Wolf Riders would be a real nice bonus, because you can reserve move that 9 with your Shaman in a Wolf Riders unit, move forward, cast, and move back. So a real good, a useful combo, I will say. I'll commit to. So arcane items for 55 points, you've got the Staff of Badum. You apply a D3 modifier to any casting roll that you make. However, if you roll a double 1 or a double 6, your guy blows up. You center a 5-inch blast on the bearer. Every model with their base under risks being hit with a strength 6 AP -1 and then the staff is destroyed. A bit of a return to the Orcs and Goblin days of ages past, where it's high risk, high reward. I quite like it, whether, like, say, maybe, again, the first thing that comes into my head is that Goblin weird knob in a Wolf Riders unit. You can skirmish with them because the bases are bigger. You're going to be hitting less things fully because they're only going to be risk being hit rather than actually just auto get hit. So it minimises those downsides a bit, but a D3 modifier to the casting rolls, really effective, I think. I like it. I like it until it blows up. Idol of Gork, 40 points. All your spells ranges increase by 3. And in addition, once per turn, you can re-roll a casting roll for 40 points. I think he's really, really effective. Obviously, if you get sort of a mid-range spell roll, you maybe don't want to re-roll it, meaning that there is an argument to be taking the Staff of Badum still, rather than just being like auto take of the Idol of Gork. But the 3-inch increased range is nice. It means that you'll be more likely to be able to maneuver to be outside of the 24-inch range of dispel range of enemy wizards. It fits into, say, like a level 2's magic item allowance to allow you to capitalise a bit on that increased range and make a level 2 a bit more worthwhile. Though I think everyone is taking level 4s right nowadays, unless you've got like a narrative reason to be taking level 2s. But still, excellent magic item. It joins the other excellent magic items in the Orcs and Goblins list, I would say. The Hag's Brew, 25 points. Basically, anyone that can't already take the Lore of Troll Magic can take this magic item, and it gains you access to the Lore of Troll Magic. Now, there are some really good spells in there, especially, I would say, the level 6 of the spell, which gains regeneration of flammable to any unit within 18. That's a very, very good enchantment. It's hard to get a 5-up save onto one of your units outside of Oaken Shield or Earthen Ramparts. Earthen Ramparts not allowing you to charge is a massive downside in the Orcs and Goblins army list. So that's one of the spells that's really, really good. I think it's only High Magic that can give out a 5-up, or as a main spell lore, that can give out a 5-up save of some kind with magic that doesn't require you to be within the unit. Outside of that, also like some vomits. I suppose we'll get onto this. If you want a more complete rundown of the lore of troll magic, skip to the Troll Hag, which is later in this guide, and we'll get it through the entire list there. But those are the ones that really stood out to me that could be more useful in a main Orcs and Goblins list. So we'll go on to the Nomadic Waaagh. Now this is it's an entirely mounted Orcs and Goblins list, with the exception of a giant, as well as the Badlands Ogre Bulls. It sort of plays into a more impetuous nature. You're not going to have access to quell impetuosity on Black Orc war bosses, even though they do feature within the list. I suppose they're going too wild, running around on their chariots that they gain access to in the list, as well as on their wyverns or whatever else you want to mount them on. Effectively, all of your characters need to be on a mount of some sort, be that anything from a boar or a wolf, chariots, up to wyverns. It's just, you've got to be mounted. In your core, you're going to gain additional access to Goblin Wolf chariots, which would normally be in special. You can have up to 1 Boar Boys mob if you take your general as an Orc boss, and if your general is a Black Orc boss, you can take 0 to 1 Black Orc Boar Chariot as a core, which otherwise are rare and a new choice found only in the Nomadic Waaagh list. In your special, you're going to have the standard Boar Boys, Boar Chariots, Snotling Pulp Wagons, and then rare you actually have Black Orc Boar Chariots, Giants, which is the only non-mounted outside of Mercenaries, and then Badlands Ogres Bulls and Bonegrinder Giant, which are both Mercenaries new, the Arcane Journal. So, what do you actually gain for the downsides of losing access to all your infantry? Well, you gain the Cunning Horde. Any Wolf Riders mobs can gain the Ambusher's special rule for 1 point a model. In addition, Goblin Shamans, Goblin bosses that are on a wolf can gain ambushes at plus 10 points. That ties in a little bit to the backstabbing magic weapon that you'll be getting into those flanks and rears much more easily, especially if you've got big distractions coming from the front. That means that they can't turn and face you. Useful special rule, gets you deep into your opponent's lines. If you can get a large Goblin Wolf Riders mob that can easily take on cannon crews, shooting units, especially from behind, and just delivers them quite nicely, ignoring impetuosity until you essentially just want to be charging anyway. Hit them fast, hit them hard. Within a Nomadic Waaagh, any Orc model that's mounted on a War Boar, Black Orc bosses, and Shamans gain the impact hits 1, as well as having armor piercing -1 on those hits. In addition, 0 to 1 Orc Boar Boys mob per 1,000 points can have Vanguard for 1 point a model. This is a rule that we're actually seeing a fair amount in these Arcane journals, like Bretonnian Army of Infamy Exiles got access to a banner that grants Vanguard. Here we're seeing it on 1 unit of Boar Boys, and allowing you to charge after Vanguard, or just as a standard, Vanguard allowing you to charge afterwards, is an incredibly powerful special rule. It's going to be one of them things that if you put in your list, it will just force your opponent to deploy further back, or will just grant you the massive bonus of having a first turn charge at your leisure, basically. Don't be surprised if, after you play this a couple of times, the first question your opponent asks is, where is your Vanguard special rule going to be coming on? It's something that, with Pegasus units in the Army of Infamy, that's the obvious choice. Do your Pegasus have the Vanguard? Yes or no? Very, very good special rule. Impact hits 1. Good. Like it. Like it. Combine it with headbutting at, and then you'll be getting 2 impact hits at a decent armor piercing as well. Just a really nice special rule for getting some hits in before the combat starts really popping off. Hunting packs. Any Goblin Wolf Rider mob within the Nomadic Waaagh army may exchange their open order and skirmishers for close order and horde. So that can be including your ambushers one. There's no restriction on having ambushers only if you skirmish or open order. So having an ambushing close order Goblin Wolf Riders mob sounds quite nice to me, actually. Close order on Wolf Rider mobs as well, only having to have unit strength 5 to gain the close order bonus of +1, makes it quite spammable in order to get the close order bonus just in multiple cases across the army list, especially when you're on a 25mm by 50mm frontage, or 25mm frontage, and only have to be 3 wide to not be in a marching column. It makes it quite easy to stack a little bit those close orders through Goblin Wolf Riders, and with a charge of 18 inches is really quite an attractive option, I think. Also, just having access to a large unit with close order and having more static combat res is quite nice, because outside of Horde on these Wolf Riders, you're going to be lacking static combat res within this army, and this is one way to make up for it and pile it in a little bit more. So 2 ways of thinking about the Goblin Wolf Rider mobs there. Units of 5 to just be able to, that's minimum units of 5, to just easily be able to get more close order bonuses, as well as maybe bigger units, gaining rank bonuses, getting more static combat res. You can stack that with banners in the main Orcs and Goblins list, like the big red banner off the top of my head adds +1 combat res, as well as having benefits. So just really nice for adding that to the list. On the move, Nomadic Waaagh, all characters must be mounted, as we've mentioned before, as well as solitary fighters. Black Orc bosses within the Nomadic Waaagh are not subject to debuys or quell impetuosity. So essentially you lose the benefit of quell impetuosity because you guys are having so much fun on the back of a chariot. However, you're not subject to debuys, which would otherwise force you to take a normal Black Orc unit for every Black Orc war boss. So it makes sense that you lose it because it's an all-mounted army. As a main army, I think it's a bit of a side grade. Obviously, losing access to Quell Impetuosity makes you more unreliable outside of the one new magic item that the intelligent orcs at. The thinking orcs at. Outside of that, you've not got much in Quell Impetuosity, so you'll be more unreliable, and with your longer charge ranges, you'll have to think about your placement in order to, if you do fail that Impetuosity roll, have multiple targets rather than just the one that your opponent might want you to have to charge. So something to think about there. I do like the theme of the army. It reminds me of the Godric and Felix Trollslayer book, where they encounter Badlands, goblins actually, Goblin Wolf Riders, whereas they tried to set up the Fort Von Deal. And I really like it as a theme. It's something I've actually been thinking about recently, is doing a Goblin Wolf Rider army, and this would be perfect for it, essentially. So that is the actual Nomadic Waaagh as an overall army. Now, the new units that have been introduced, the Black Orc Boar Chariots, for 130 points, it's 40 points more than a normal Orc Chariot. However, for that, you get a 3-up armor save rather than a 4-up armor save, as well as strength 4 on the crew rather than strength 3. That is slightly equalised by the fact that normal Orc Chariots have cavalry spears as standard, so we'll be going up to strength 4 on the charge. But then come the benefits of the Black Orc, the real benefits, I would say. So you've got options of weapons, of additional hand weapon for 1 point, so each dude on the top can be getting 2 attacks, or great weapon with 2 points a model, or per crew, which will obviously give you strength 6 then at AP -2, which is really, really nice. The Black Orc crew both have Furious Charge, so on the charge, that would mean you get your impact hits, and then with additional hand weapons, each of the crew are going to be getting 3 attacks each, so that's 6 total attacks. So a really, really nice, hefty number of attacks. You've got great weapons that could be 4 attacks from the crew, really nice, along with both of those having the Chopper's special rule. So you're going to get AP -1 on your additional hand weapons, or AP -3 on the great weapons. Makes it really versatile. With a 50mm frontage, you can fit quite a few into a normal frontage of a ranked up unit. And stacking a number of impact hits, your good armor value for mitigating any return damage and therefore combat res that is coming your way. Having first charge is really, really nice, and I think a worthwhile looking into these over Orc Boar Chariots. I do think they are an upgrade from the Orc Boar Chariots rather than just a side grade. Worthwhile thinking about them in your rare slot. For your Orc War Boss, do they want to be on a chariot? Obviously, chariots are quite an attractive option now. Because they're a chariot, they can get targeted out. But adding the wounds to the Black Orc character, I think is very nice. Because you can get singled out whether or not you want to be on a Black Orc chariot over a Wyvern is going to come down to whether or not you want, effectively, more movement on because they're the same points, 130 for this or 130 for the Wyvern. The Wyvern is going to get obviously flying 9, so marching, flying 18, and charging, the 9 + 9 is 18 of the actual charge with Swift Stride off the Wyvern, versus and it's got lesser, it's got stomp attacks D3 versus the impact hits D6 + 1 of the Black Orc Chariot, along with being able to have those great weapons. Furious Charge actually comes to more harder hitting attacks from the Black Orc Chariot crew than you would get off a Wyvern. Finally, in that, I suppose the Wyvern does have terror, but it's more of a choice to taste. I think it's even potentially just worthwhile taking both in your army, having some lesser Black Orc bosses on Boar Chariots, on Black Orc Boar Chariots, as well as potentially a Black Orc boss on Wyvern, because Wyverns, dragons, all that sort of stuff are kind of nice in this edition. But obviously then you're missing out on the impact hits on the Black Orc Boar Chariot. so hard to come down on a definitive answer for you guys in this video of those two, Wyvern versus Black Orc Boar Chariot. Let me know if I'm stupid and I'm missing something and I should be saying one ways down below, please. And actually, that's something that goes throughout this entire list. If you have more information that I've either missed or you think I should have expanded on, do please leave it below, and then you can help out anyone else looking. If you want more information, there might be some more in the comments that I have missed that other helpful people have added. So next, we've got the special character, Kiknik Toofsnatcha, which is the Goblin war boss that can be fielded in any Orcs and Goblin tribes army, and can be fielded, obviously, using any army list composition for a Goblin war boss. So that is the Nomadic Waaagh, and it fits quite nicely as a cavalry character into the Nomadic Waaagh list. So for 105 points, essentially you get the same stat line as a normal Goblin war boss, except you've got an additional leadership. So immediate positive there. You have Chomper the Wolf, who has strength 4 and 2 attacks, which when compared to a normal wolf is an extra strength and extra attack, with Armor Bane 1 on Chomper and Armored Hide 1. Really nice. Kiknik himself has the Boss's Trophy Rat. When you charge, you and any Goblin Wolf Rider unit that you've joined gain fear and +1 to the combat resolution, which is nice, especially when it comes into these static combat resolution bonuses that you can get in the Nomadic Waaagh list of Wolf Riders being close order. Could be really nice. You've got the Skull Smasher, which is basically like a claw hammer. So you've got on one side, you've got the hammer, which is +2 strength, -1 AP, Armor Bane 2 magical attacks. And you've got the pick side, which is strength user, AP -2, Armor Bane 2, multiple wounds 2. So quite a nice option. Weirdly, you've got to choose the profile that you're going to use in the first round of combat, because actually you also have a cavalry spear, which that would surely be the thing used in the first round of combat. You've got shield, light armor, so along with the armored hide 1, you're going to be on a 4-up save, and essentially you don't get any incoming damage mitigation. Next, for the special rules, you've got all sneaky like, so that's 0 to 1 Goblin Wolf Rider mobs gain ambushes for free. In addition, all Goblin Wolf Rider mobs that might have ambushes, so any that have paid the 1 point upgrade in your Nomadic Waaagh list, can apply a +1 or -1 modifier to the result to see if you come in. Because I'm small brained, I would always probably use that +1, unless I suppose you wanted to keep points off the table for some reason. But yeah, there might be reasons to take -1, right, in a specific table setup. But yeah, quite a nice special rule, especially paired with Nomadic Waaagh. You've got Hit and Run. Should you win a round of combat, any Goblin Wolf Rider mob is joined may fall back in good order rather than making a follow-up or pursuit. So we'll let you just get away that little bit more and have more room for maneuver when you win a round of combat. If you winning largely, it will be your opponent's turn. You fall back in good order. The reason it will likely be in your opponent's turn that it's most useful is that you can then fall back in good order, reform in any direction, and then charge other things after you've broken up your opponent's line a little bit. In your turn, you might want to fall back in good order if your opponent's lost, fall them back in whichever which way, and then you fall back in good order, and when they charge you, you flee as a charge reaction, so it can get your goblins out of dodge maybe a little bit if you were being baited. You've done a bit of damage and now you need to run off. But yeah, my instinct is that you will mostly want to use it in your opponent's turn if you've managed to get that 2 rounds of combat after charging where you've won. Finally, you've got the ambushes rule yourself, so you can join the ambushes that you've joined. Chariot runners, and basically other things that Wolf Riders have. For 105 points, I think he's definitely a worthwhile character. I mean, like an unupgraded Goblin Big Boss on Wolf comes to 70 points, so for only 35 points more, you're gaining a decent magic weapon you're gaining the Ambushers rule to any Wolf Riders, even in a non-Nomadic Waaagh list, which is very nice, as well as the better profile of the Wolf and leadership for Toofsnatcha himself. So yeah, a worthwhile little character, not earth-shattering, but also certainly not bad. So finally we get on to the Troll Horde in the Arcane Journal Army of Infamy list. In this, you're going to basically have an army, surprise, surprise, based around trolls. Now, that's going to take the form of one troll mob per 1,000 points within your core, with 0 to 1 additional troll mob in core per troll hag taken. Weirdly, there's no, other than the new troll hag unit, which goes into like sort of a secondary list. You can have as many as you want in your character section to obviously your points limit. But I found it sort of weird that there was no like character level basic troll, like troll big boss unit. What you are going to be based around for this army largely, I would say, is weird knobs, weird boys, things like that, because one of the special rules that we'll get into a minute. But they're going to want to be the key things that you take. You've got a lot of combat power within those trolls, especially sticking power with the regeneration that they've got built in, as well as bonuses to that in this list. And what you're really going to want is the spreading of leadership, as we'll get into later, by weird knobs and weird boys. In addition to the trolls in core, you can take normal orc mobs, goblin mobs, spider riders, wolf riders. So you've still got faster moving elements, even though you've not got black orcs in there. But you have got the spider riders, wolf riders, and you've got ability to get combat res bonuses still cheaply based on goblin mobs and orc mobs. In special, you're going to have troll mobs again, in case you run out of the ones in your core slots. Goblin wolf chariots, 0 to 1 orc boar boys per 1,000, orc boar chariots per 1,000. Quite nice to have. It's not that limited in options, I wouldn't say, the troll horde. And then rare, you've got giants, mercenaries, badland ogre bulls, and the Bonegrinder Giant again. So really quite a nice list. Again, missing that hero level non-witch troll. So your battle standard bearer is still going to be a normal orc, rather than being able to have like a troll with the battle standard, which is a bit of a swing and a miss, sadly. For me, would have loved a troll with a big standard. So what benefits do you get from the troll horde? You get enhanced regeneration. So the regeneration, any model with a regeneration save in the troll horde army may re-roll all failed regeneration rolls against wounds caused by non-magical attacks. That is an incredibly good rule. Incredibly good. It means that any heroes with trollhide trousers, I know I said you probably want the weird knobs, but if you did take an orc character with trollhide trousers, you can re-roll that regeneration roll so long as they don't have magical weapons. It means that the basic, I'm going to call them the basic troops of your army, but your core choices of the trolls are all going to have this 5+5+ save that won't be ignored except by magical attacks or if something causes flaming, which is obviously a downside of trolls. But just very, very good to have ogre level things, monstrous infantry that are just so tough already, and then gaining this re-rolling save. Really good. Now, one of the large downsides of trolls in general is their low leadership and stupidity, and that sort of is something that would keep this list in check with. Now, the Oi This Way mitigates it slightly and makes the list essentially playable, from trolls being, I would say, unplayable in the base list of having sort of like trolls with leadership 4 in a normal orcs and goblins list just being stupid all the time. Basically, the Oi This Way rule slightly mitigates that by, if the character isn't running away, a friendly troll mob within the command range of an orc shaman, goblin shaman, or troll hag can use that character's leadership instead of their own. So then for stupidity, you're going to be leadership 7, maybe 8, less if you're a goblin, right? But 7 or 8 based on the orc shaman's leadership. So it starts to make the list actually playable, which is a big bonus. Next, we've got the Troll Tongue. So any Orc Shaman or Goblin Shaman within the Troll Horde army can use the Lore of Troll magic, which we'll get into exactly next. Now this is a benefit because it's going to tie into the Oidis Way, because one of the spells, the signature level spell, will allow you to re-roll any failed stupidity tests, so increasing the likelihood that you're going to actually be able to play and get your army doing what you want it to do. So big benefit of the enhanced regeneration and some ways of mitigating the downsides of trolls. Now overall in the army, do I think it's wildly broken? No, I don't. It's something that can be. It could be very frustrating if you directly try and take on the Troll Horde. If you run into them and then they just regenerate everything, but you will be getting the combat res from the regeneration, or your opponent, if you're playing the Troll Horde, will be getting the combat res from the regenerations. You will be having expensive models which can potentially be outnumbered and run down. That's something to watch out for, and is a reason to take the Orc Boys units or Goblin units to get static combat res on your side still. I don't think it's an auto win army. There will inevitably be some people crying on the internet that it is, but I think it's an army that's got some strong benefits and some really harsh downsides in sort of the ways of old Orcs and Goblins when they had animosity, and could range from super strong because your Goblin Doom Diver has just landed and killed the opponent's general, or Foot of Gork has just gone on a warpath and gone down the entire opponent's line, and it can range down to the low where you roll on animosity every turn. And that's sort of similar in this list with the amount of stupidity that you'll have in there on your key units. So the Lore of Troll magic, let's get into this. The signature spell, Big Smarts, is definitely one that I think you will want to be taking with all of your casters within the Troll Horde list. If you are looking at this because you've taken the magic item, which allows you to access Troll Lore, and you've got a unit of trolls, take the signature spell, be near the trolls, because what it does is an enchantment that casts on an 8, so quite low, remains in play. Whilst in play, friendly units within the command range of the model may re-roll failed stupidity tests. Additionally, if a friendly unit is within the command range has already failed a stupidity test, may immediately make the test again. So if you cast it after the stupidity roll has been made, you've already failed it, you get to re-roll it. So it basically just covers all bases if the remains in play gets dispelled during your opponent's turn. Very nice, very nice. It starts to make the army reliable enough to play with as an army. So definitely one to go for. Next, we've got the Acidic Bile. And I do, just as an overall of this list, of this like magic item lore, I do actually really like it, because overall they are widely quite useful in no matter which one you roll. And that's because of quite a good AP value on most spells that are causing damage, as well as some other things. So we've got Acidic Bile, Magic Missile, casting value 8+. It's basically a 3-inch small blast. It once cast, you place it and then scatter it D3+1, and it does strength 3, AP -2 hits to any that have risked being hit under that template. So it can potentially get quite a lot of hits, and an AP -2 is definitely nothing to sniff at, especially for an 8+ casting value Magic Missile. Really, really good, I would say. Troll Brains is a hex with a 15-inch range, so on the longer side of hexes. It's got a casting value 9+, remains in play. The enemy unit becomes subject to stupidity and reduces leadership by 1, so just makes it more likely they will fail that stupidity. And as a player that usually plays Chaos with obviously the Gift of the Gods where you gain stupidity, it can be really, really annoying to have stupidity, and especially at a leadership -1. Really, go for it. Go for it. Make everyone stupid. And they will be feeling your pain if you were playing a Troll Horde list. Ravenous Recourse, it's a conveyance, casting value 8+. cast on self. Until the end of this turn, all friendly units that have stupidity that are within 12 inches of the caster have +2 modifier to their movement. Really useful in a Troll Horde list where lots of things have stupidity. Less useful outside of the Troll Horde list unless you're stacking trolls. But then by the time you've done that, you're probably going to want some of the benefits in the Troll Horde list to actually make your army usable. So largely usable mainly for the Troll Horde list. Foetid Whirlpool remains in play. Magical Vortex that makes enemy units suffer D3+3, Strength 4, AP -2. So again, it's got a decent number of hits for a Magical Vortex. Strength 4, better than obviously Acidic Bile, and retaining that AP value of -2, which is really nice. Now, Torrent of Filth, this is one of the better ones. It's an assailment with a casting value of 8 that basically does a Flamer template's worth of Strength 3, AP -2. I mean, it's no Spectral Doppelganger where you get 2d6 hits with an Ogre Blade, but it's a solid assailment when you compare it to things like Hammerhand, which are only doing, D3+1 Strength 4s. A Flamer template's worth of AP -2, really, really good, I think. Then finally, Rapid Regeneration for the level 6 spell. You've got casting value 9, so still quite low of a casting value, I'd say. You gain Flammable and Regeneration 5 until the start of next turn subphase. Not something that's going to benefit your trolls specifically, but for your other units that might be in support of the trolls, like your Orc Boys, Boar Boys, Goblins, if you want to be bothered casting it on them, is just actually really useful to gain that 5-up save. And this is the one that I was saying in the magical items section is one of my favourite in the list just in general, because getting that 5-up sort of, I'm going to call it damage mitigation for lack of a better word, getting that 5-up damage mitigation is really hard to do outside of Oakenshield, where you have to be within the unit, Earthen Ramparts, which then has the drawback of you're not able to charge, or High Magic, which who has access to High Magic, right, except for High Elves. So yeah, that is the Troll lore. A really solid lore, I would say. Not the highest casting values, and mitigates some of the bad effects of your stupidity, or leans into them like Ravenous Recourse. So what new units do you get in the Troll list? Well, you get the Troll Hag, which for 235 points clocks in at around the same cost as a Giant, being 35 points more expensive, but you do have one level of Wizardry just as standard, which are usually priced at about 35 points, so spot on for that level of Wizardry. What you gain on and lose for that is you've got less movement, less weapon skill, you've got the same strength and 1 less toughness than a Giant. Giants being toughness 6. The same number of wounds of 6. Same initiative. You've got 3 attacks, which you can choose to use your normal attacks, which is sometimes a benefit to have a more reliable thing than, say, like rolling on a Giant attacks table, as well as leadership 8 down from 10 on a Giant. You can upgrade to be level 2 for 35 points, like 270. So getting a bit more expensive, especially for a level 2 caster, when we know a lot of level 2s are being shut down completely by level 4s. You can purchase magic items up to a total of 50 points, which I would be suggesting to go with casting items on the Troll Hag. Maybe a Talisman of Protection if you really fancied that extra layer of save, though you're already going to have Regeneration 5-up. In a Troll Horde list, that's obviously going to be able to be re-rolled versus non-magical attacks. So you're already going to have a 5-up, 5-up. It's obviously much nicer to have a 5-up, 5-up, 5-up than a 5-up, 5-up, but I don't know how many times I can say 5-up in a single sentence. So let's just leave it at that one. You've got Immune Psychology as well as Unbreakable, which mitigates that leadership of 8 rather than being 10 on the Giant. But that ties into your stupidity that you will have. So you'll be leadership 8 for your own stupidity, as well as spreading within within your command range, so not 6, 8-inch range for command range, unless you're the general giving other trolls leadership. So that's leadership 8. Obviously, you're going to want to take the re-rolling stupidity test spell because you just don't want to be stupid, right? Indiscriminate hunger, which is essentially during a command phase that you're in combat, so likely a turn after you've charged, or if the enemy charges you going into your turn. Opponent takes an initiative test, because you're always going to choose to do it. If failed, the target unit suffers a single wound, and you regain a single lost wound. If they fail, this is. If they pass, nothing happens, the attack has no effect. So quite nice for just regenerating wounds on top of your regeneration save, which is more just like an armor save nowadays rather than actually getting wounds back. You've got Stomp Attacks D6, which at the strength 6, same as a Giant, and Behemoth will be at AP -2, so he's nice for a damage output. You've got Slimy Shanks, which means that your enemies will be at a -1 to hit you, as well as the Motherly Love special rule, and this is where you have a giant-like attacks table that you can choose to do instead of your 3 normal attacks. The 3 normal attacks being weapon skill 2, you will likely want to roll on this table unless you're up against like a couple of cavalry models, a couple of single wound models, essentially. On a 1 to 2, you get Smother, which is really good. You place a large blast, so the center hole is directly over the center of the target enemy unit. Any model, friend or foe, but not including the Troll Hag, whose base lies underneath, risk being hit at strength 6 because of your strength, AP -2. So that's really good, can just flatten an entire unit. You've got Mother, which is the second result, which does a single model, suffers D3 +1 wounds with no armor or regen, but wards can be taken. And Mither, which is the enemy unit in general, suffers D6 +1 hits, so skipping out the weapon skill step, obviously, each using strength 6 as the model, no armor save, but ward and regen are allowed. In addition, the shocked enemy unit suffers -1 to their leadership characteristic till the end of the turn. So 2 of the results really good for just doing a load of damage, and the Mother attack good for doing multiple wounds on a single model, though probably not as good as the Mither, because that stuff does multiple hits to the one unit that can spill over into more total wounds done, even if it's just a single model. So really 2/3 of the time, if you've got a lot of models or a single model, you're going to be effective. And then 1/3 of the time, there's a result on there that you don't really want because it's the wrong sort for the enemy that you're going into. So probably worth rolling on, but it is still nice to have that option of having the 3 attacks if you just need to do a couple of points of damage to an enemy unit. Finally, you've got the Troll Vomit attack, which after all other attacks have been done, you do a strength 3, AP -2, 1 additional attack to an enemy model you're in contact with. A nice little bonus. It's like the troll vomit attacks, right? Outside of combat, you've got the Swamp breath weapon. It's strength 3, AP -2. It's quite nice. You're largely going to want to be charging because it's a Behemoth creature, though, so you're likely going to want to be charging in order to do the most damage possible. But it's not incredibly useful, but it's AP -2. It's a nice little cherry on the top, but not something to really shout about. Overall, I sort of like the unit. It's hard to fully recommend something that is only of level 2 because of the dominance of level 4s in this edition. However, because of not being that much more than a giant, allowing that leadership 8 to be passed around your troll horde, I think there is use there, especially in the Troll Horde army list. Outside of that, I would recommend, so saying just in a normal Orcs and Goblins list, I'd be recommending to take a normal Giant because it's got better toughness. It's not paying the points to be a level 2 or a level 1 that is likely not going to get many spells off anyway, and it's got longer movement for being more likely to make the charge in the first place as a success rather than you yourself getting charged and the enemy striking before you. Finally, we've got the basically special character for the troll list, though it can be used in any orcs and goblins list. And actually, I really like it. Ogdruz Swampdigga, who is an orc weird knob, basically transfers some benefits just intrinsically in the character. Just like the Nomadic Waaagh character, transfers some of the benefits of that into the special character, and you can have that in your normal orcs and goblins list. For 195 points, you get a level 3 caster who can take elementalism or troll magic. He's got the stats are sort of by the by, other than leadership 8. 3 wounds and toughness 5 is sort of the key ones to be looking at, because as a spellcaster, 2 attacks, you're never going to be great in combat. So it's almost it's just bad in combat because it's a wizard. Leadership 8 though can transfer to troll units that you're within command range of with the troll caller rule. So that is how your troll horde benefits of like passing leadership for stupidity can work outside of the troll horde list. So just very nice to see on the character, has a good place within normal lists there. You've got protect the boss. The model cannot be targeted by enemy shooting or spells if within 3 of a troll mob, unless the model is the closest target, like normal sort of character targeting rules. Siphon strength, if you're within 3 inches of a troll mob with a unit strength of 6 or more, so that's 2 trolls, that is not fleeing, you can apply +1 to the casting rolls. It will essentially just make you a level 4 caster. And it sort of means that you want to always just be accompanying those troll mobs around. Trollhide Shawl improves armor by 1, so you get a 6-up save. In addition, you get the regeneration 5+ and flammable, so basically just like Trollhide trousers, right? But he's just nice to see with that regeneration. If you are in a troll horde list, it will be re-rollable as per. Chopper's special rule, which won't really apply that often because you've got a magic weapon in the form of the Bogwood Staff, which is strength +2, AP -1, magical attacks. For each unsafe wound done with the weapon, Ogdruz recovers a lost wound. So if you obviously do 2 wounds, you recover 2 wounds, which is nice because a lot of the magic items that recover wounds are capped at 1 per turn, whereas this one isn't. Other than that, you've not got that many massive benefits over a normal weird knob. Where the sort of benefit of this character comes in is that even with just Trollhide trousers added to a orc weird knob, you come to 185 points. So for 15 points more, you're going to get the ability to get +1 casting value from within 3 inches of the troll mob. You're going to get the Bogwood Staff to regenerate your own wounds, as well as spreading command if you are in a normal Orcs and Goblins army, spreading your leadership in command range to trolls. So you're getting a points reduction for the character essentially, as well as some other benefits over a level 3 for only 15 points more than a level 3 with the 5-up regen. So again, not an earth-shattering character, but some nice benefits over the base level, and not one that I think anyone's going to be super upset about. He says now. So into the mercenary units that we see in this list. Obviously these can be taken in the main Orcs and Goblins list, both the Troll and the Nomadic Waaagh list. And finally, actually, Badlands Ogre Bulls can be taken any list that can take mercenaries. So that's the main army, Grand Army list compositions, and anything that's not excluded, such as the Bretonnian Exiles Army of Infamy, weirdly can't take Ogre Bulls because it's not in their specific list of mercenaries that they can take. Bit weird, would have liked to see more open mercenary usage, especially in the Exiles Army of Infamy, but it is what it is. It is what it is. I mean, they're only like a ragtag bunch. Anyway, this is an Orcs guide. What we get in the Badlands Ogre Bulls is for 31 points, you get an Ogre Bull, essentially. So you get quite a good monstrous infantry stat line at a fair price. 7 points, you get a champion that's listed as 6 points in the actual unit options. Who knows which way we're going to swing on that. There's obviously a 1 points difference in it. You can upgrade to a standard bearer, Bellower, so nice to have the full command on there and can take a magic standard worth up to 50 points. Obviously in the most recent FAQ it was cleared up that those magic standards come from the army list. That, or not the magic standards, but any magic items come from the army list that they're included from. So I imagine that will be coming from the Orcs and Goblins magic items lists, rather than having to come from, say, Ogres or some random place. Because this is in the Orcs and Goblins book, it will come from Orcs and Goblins. You can add heavy armor as well as great weapons for 4 points each, and that comes to 39 points, and gives you the two benefits, or the two upgrades, to get to Iron Guts for the same points as Iron Guts in the Ogre army list. Now, Iron Guts, being great weapons, heavy armor, are actually quite a lot better than normal bulls in my experience. It's the way that you want to take them. Big units, gut stars, work really, really well. Now, although you won't be able to have a character in here, the great weapon just combines really nicely with the Ogre stat line. You're initiative 2 anyway, so you're only losing 1 initiative. And to gain that AP -2, as well as going to strength 6, is a massive benefit when really you're going to be striking last anyway. Another option is the Iron Fist, where you get an additional attack as well as an additional point of armor. So you could go to armor 4 up, included with heavy armor, and an Iron Fist. But I tend to like getting the AP -2 just more frequently across the board. It's also the 3 wounds, meaning that they've got to do, obviously, 3 wounds before a model's attacks are removed. Or 6 total wounds before the second model's removed. It just really ties into great weapons really nicely. Ogre Charge adds on top of your impact hits 1 per ogre, adding the rank bonus to the armor piercing characteristic of those impact hits is really nice, though I've even liked going as wide as 5 and just relying on the sheer number of volume of attacks to just smash through the enemy. Yeah, really, really like the unit, really like the addition to Mercenaries of Badlands Ogre Bulls, and I think they tie quite nicely into basically any Orcs and Goblins list, except for the Troll Horde, where Trolls are just going to be better because you've got the regen that's going to be re-rolled. Why you would take these over Trolls in a normal list is that they're not stupid, so therefore you can actually use them. Should probably be obvious to, if you've played Trolls in any list until you get to that Troll Horde, you're basically just moving forwards by your movement amount every turn because they're only like leadership 4. So next, let's get on to the Bonegrinder Giant. Now, this is another one, like the Giants, it can get quite complicated to go through. So what we'll go through is the main differences to the normal Giant, as well as the overall feel of what I think the attacks are like. Basically, for an extra 100 points over the normal Giant, you've got the same movement value, the same weapon skill, you gain an additional strength, going to strength 7. You've got toughness 6, which is the same as a normal Giant, but 2 extra wounds at wounds 8. Your initiative is 3, so I believe, looking at it, 1 extra than the normal Giant. You've got the same number of stomp attacks. You cause terror the same as a Giant. Immune to psych, unbreakable. You are a mercenary rather than being just a normal part of the list. Not a great deal of benefits there, unless your opponent is toughness 5. Your strength of 7 doesn't benefit for the stomp attacks that much. That obviously will come into it sometimes against like individual characters or I suppose trolls, but it's not always that useful. A normal Giant strength 6 should largely suffice. The extra 2 wounds while being only toughness 6, yes, it is nice. Whether or not it's worth a 50% increase on the Giant's cost, I don't particularly think so. What I would have liked to see is more stomp attacks, because the stomp, I suppose you get 1 extra stomp attack for the Bonegrinder Giant, sorry. But I would have liked to see a fair portion more, or maybe even just impact hits from the Bonegrinder Giant on top of what the normal Giant gets. The actual attacks that the Bonegrinder Giant puts out The table comes down to a more split up table. So rather than just rolling on a d6 table, you've got little things, big things, and bigger things that then cross-reference across this grid. Let's actually zoom in on that grid. So you've got little things, bigger things, that then you have a D3 result that works out what you want. In Edbutt is the same. You've got a slightly better strength, obviously, for your Wallop and your Mighty Swing, but they effectively do the same amount of wounds with a slightly better strength than the normal giant attacks. The Crush Underfoot actually becomes much better for the Bonegrinder Giant. And he's basically like the Troll Hag. Here we have the Crush Underfoot. Like the Troll Hag, is a large template that does Strength 7, AP -3, so very, very good at taking out big units. So that's one of the benefits of a Bonegrinder Giant. Next, you've got the Vomit, which also works against infantry, in which you put a flame template and any base underneath it risks being hit at Strength 5, AP -2. So again, can do a lot of hits to a smaller things unit. You've got the Grind Its Bones, so essentially that comes in again under the little things, that the entire front rank of the enemy has to take an initiative test or will just die. Characters get a Lookout Sir roll, so it makes the giant very likely to be able to take out units of infantry more reliably than a normal giant would. The Crush Underfoot is better than the Belly Flop. The Grind Its Bones is, at least maybe not against elves, but against humans and dwarves, will be effective at taking out full front ranks of the enemy, or at least like half of them for humans, 2/3 of them for dwarves. And the Vomit is a reliable attack. So essentially, the Bonegrinder Giant results in a more reliable creature than the normal giant does, in that you've only got 3 results that will apply to each troop type, and therefore you're more likely to get the result that results in most damage to the opponent that you actually want. Whether that's worth 100 points, I don't know. I'm someone that struggles to fit in, as much fun as giants are, I'm someone that struggles to fit in giants into my lists anyway. Maybe that's just because I've been running with like a Chaos All Mounted list and it doesn't really fit the theme to have someone walking about, but maybe I'll try it out a bit more now that this Bonegrinder Giant is rocking about and able to be taken by the Warriors of Chaos list. The reliability aspect, there's definitely something to be said for. The base stat line with only 2 more wounds, I think that's the bit that puts me off over a normal giant slightly. At the end of the day, when you've got such a random unit that doesn't rely on numbers of attacks, say like the Beastman giant types do, when you've got something that's so random, it can spike quite a lot. You could just wipe out units for fun with the Crush Underfoot, or you could Grind Its Bones and they pass all their initiative tests all the time. Very random, a fun unit to take. I have used them in a couple of like sort of friendly games, but just something that's up for debate, I think. Tell me whether or not you like giants below. Am I missing something on the attacks? Is it overwhelmingly better or overwhelmingly worse? I think, again, like I said before, it's something worth leaving below. And with that, I think we're coming to the end of the guide. If you have enjoyed it, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Apparently there's another like bell icon now that you have to do as to get notified of content, because YouTube has changed yet again. Please do that, it does help out the channel. And if you really like it, there's a Patreon link below, as I said before. And I'll catch you next time. See you in a bit.